What about you? Like, 'cause when you had Entourage, I know it was probably a lot harder than people think getting it going, especially with HBO and everything, getting it going, getting it on TV, casted, everything else.
Yeah.
Do you remember that point where you were just like, from being a writer to being a creator and basically doing all the stuff you did to build this show and it becoming such a big hit that you were like, wow, man, I've made it, or I've arrived?
I mean, I remember, the New York Times was like, you wanted that review.
Yeah.
When the review came out for the show, which said it was the best show on TV in 2003 or 2004, that it made me feel good for about 5 minutes. But I've always been a very kind of negative, what's next and not looking back kind of person. So I appreciated it for a minute, but honestly, I don't know. People always ask me this. Like, nothing really changed for me, except for I had more money, which was nice. But I never sit around and was like, oh, we got this great hit or we do this, because every time I would sit down to write a script, it was the same anxiety, which I don't know if you have, when you get in the ring.
Absolutely.
It was the same anxiety of like, okay, I got to make this great. And I don't mean because anybody else thinks it, because even the movies I did where, people criticize or whatever, you do the best you can. And if you really put your hard work in, it's like a fight. We know these fighters come in, sometimes they get knocked out in 30 seconds and people are like, oh, they suck.
Right.
No, they don't suck.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're tops in the world. There's just one guy who's just better.
Yeah.
But so I never really have sat back and thought about, oh, wow, I made it or I did this. I kind of always just try to do the best I can, and that's it,
Yeah, and you've done a fantastic job with that. What advice would you give to somebody coming into Hollywood trying to be Vincent Chase now that you've kind of wrote the life, the best of anyone of what it's like? What's your advice to somebody coming to Hollywood to try to make it in the movies that can pertain to pretty much anyone?
I never think anybody should come into any business like to be a movie star or to be a this. I think it's got to be, and like you said, you wanted to do other things. There are a lot of other things I would have preferred to do. I didn't have the skill set to do them. So I think you go into this business if you really love it, and if there's really no other options, because it's a tough business, and obviously you have a similar thing there. The amount of money that most people make in writing or directing is really, it's below the poverty line. So you have to be in this because you love it, not for money, not for fame. And if you're lucky enough that things like that come along, great. But I think you really have to love the process for it to be something that you can do,
And when you say love the process, what do you mean by that? Like what do you love? So obviously you can write for days and days and days and not get anything out of that. What is it that has to happen for you to feel successful at what you wrote, or to feel that love that you're talking about?
Well, like I said, I mean, I started as a stand-up comedian, and I was the guy who, if there was one guy not laughing out of however many, that was the guy I focused on. So I don't really have that. The things that I love, writing has never been something I love. Directing, being on the set, the camaraderie, similar to a sports thing. Writing was always the way to get to what I did love, which was being on the set and making things happen, because it's not painting. It's not something you can do on your own. You need a lot of people and a lot of collaboration, and you need a lot of luck. So to me, though, there's nothing like when you get a scene done that you like, and then you get on with the proper actors and you see them elevate it to something even better. That's what I love.
And then when the New York Times writes about it in a positive way, that's even better.
Yeah, and by the way, that's not to. Another thing you have to do is not really take that for what it was worth. It was great to me because I was like, my parents are going to wake up and read this. It's awesome. And the New York Times wrote about a movie I wrote that it was not releasable. They said, how did this fucking movie get in a movie theater? So a movie I did earlier. So you can't take the negative or the positive too seriously. But a lot of my life was motivated by my parents not freaking telling me I was doing nothing, because they kind of, when I graduated college and said I'm going to LA to be a stand-up comedian and make movies, my parents thought I was out of my mind. And you got to remember, this is 1990. Yeah. There's no Instagram, there's no social media, right. And I had nothing to do with the film business. Not a single person I knew growing up, not my parents. So they didn't even understand what I was talking about, and they just spent a lot of money on college education that they thought was going to go in the trash. So it is about finding the path and really sticking to it. And, when you said, what about Hollywood? And again, people can do it in different ways. I came here and my head was down. I got married very young and I was focused on work back then. I was just like figuring out how I could make things happen in a very difficult business. I wasn't here for any of the other stuff,